Now, I feel there are kind of two camps, those who actually love the stage and love public speaking, and those who would rather step themselves in their eyeballs before they actually speak. But at the same time, being able to speak with confidence and with conviction and also full of confidence, may it be in a stand-up meeting, may it be in an all-hands meeting, may it be in an actual keynote, this is exactly what builds and boosts confidence like nothing else. So the question is, what is the difference between an average speaker and a speaker who gets not only the message across, but who activates people to get inspired and also act on that? And we are joined by somebody who has made that her profession. We are joined by Lisa Evans, who is a certified public speaking and storytelling coach, which I'm super excited about to dig in a little bit more. She's also a professional speaker and an author. Lisa, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me, Petra. I'm delighted to be on your podcast.
Now, trust me, me too, because you've got such an intriguing specialization. And, as I just said in the intro, public speaking and getting your message across is more important than just having the best technical skills. But I'm curious, what got you into that field?
Well, I got into speaking really quite by accident. I had to learn to hear and speak over again when a virus destroyed most of my hearing. So prior to that, I'd spent 20 plus years working as a midwife. That was my calling. And then life drastically changed for me. I had to reinvent myself later in life, and it was nothing that I planned. It was not on the cards at all. Just one of those lemons that I got. And so I got accepted onto a research trial and I got a cochlear implant. And in learning to rehabilitate to hear again in a very different way, I needed to speak, I needed to get used to the sound of my voice and just really come to terms with having a significant hearing loss and how the new world was going to be for me. So initially, public speaking was a way of building confidence, a way of me getting back out there as part of my rehabilitation. But then I began to see the results. I began to see that when you feel confident about speaking, then so much changes. You feel empowered, you feel inspired, you know that you can make a difference, and opportunities start to arise for you. And so I decided that I was going to go down this path, and I hired the best coaches that I could afford, and I read and I learned all that I could about the art and science of speaking and storytelling. And I started my business in 2014, and I help leaders to deliver standout presentations using the power of story. So storytelling, business storytelling is really my specialty. And I've even been given the tagline, the story midwife, because of my background and what I'm doing now, which is kind of stuck. And your area of expertise, Petra, being personal brand, you would know the importance of having that tagline and that identity and that unique personality of your background and your skills and your experience to be who you are right now. So that's a little bit about my journey.
Wow. Speaking of storytelling, what a story you've got. And, there's this saying, make your mess your message, because often we don't expect where we land, but a circumstance, an event, a personal challenge just forces us in that direction. And it's great that you actually embraced that and made that your profession. Now, because you have actually dug a lot deeper than probably anyone else, I'm curious, what is the difference between somebody who speaks, because we are all speaking, and somebody who speaks with conviction, with confidence, and gets the message across that people actually resonate with it? What's the difference?
Yeah, I think these days more than ever, people are looking for a genuine connection and authenticity. And you can't beat that in person, ideally. But when somebody is fully present in the moment and they're focused on the audience and they're really there to serve without any ego involved, then that person does come across as truly genuine and somebody that others want to listen to. So Obviously, you need to be across your material, ideally as the subject matter expert. You've got to enjoy and love what you're talking about, because if you don't come across as enthusiastic and having that level of energy about what you're doing, you can't expect others to be interested. So having that real passion for what you do is important, and having a topic that the market is interested in as well. And the people that really make an impact are those that are 100% present and focused. They're not people who read out loud or hide behind slides or get caught up on too much data or too much information. Sometimes simple is best, and definitely the best speakers are masterful at storytelling, without a doubt.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned storytelling, because it's such a big part of getting your message across. And I'm curious, you're a certified storytelling coach. What does it entail?
Yeah, so I became a certified speaking and storytelling coach back in 2015 as part of my journey. And look, I think we're all storytellers, and particularly those of us who are of a certain age, because when I was a kid, like, we didn't even have a color TV until Dad bought one home for the Olympics. So I grew up on stories, and also as a young nurse, we didn't have much in the way of psychological support. We didn't have debriefing. We didn't have employee assistance programs. And so storytelling was a way that we used to heal and get over the trauma that we experienced working, frontline on the job. So I think I've always been a storyteller, but learning to effectively coach and going through that accreditation process of being a coach really did help me to find the right clients and find that niche in business storytelling. So it's been a wonderful journey, opened up my eyes to lots of different people and techniques and frameworks. And look, I think anyone can call themselves a storyteller, but in order to be able to really make a difference, I think that having some skills and tools to help you along your way, it really does make a difference.
Absolutely. And you probably hear that more often than anyone else saying, oh, I don't know how to tell a story, or I'm nervous, or I've got nothing interesting to say, or I don't need to speak, I am good doing the doing. Now, where would you start with somebody who realizes, because they want to get into the C-suite, because they want to get onto board, that public speaking is a big part of it? Where would you start with helping them, clarifying the message, and then get it across in a confident way?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you would know so well that public speaking is very much part of your brand. If you're a business owner, it's very much part of your marketing toolkit. I mean, we can spend a whole lot of money on Google AdWords and SEO, or we can go out there and we can speak for free and probably have a really good time. And if we're good at speaking, people can pay us. So I always find it crazy when I come across business owners and entrepreneurs who are literally leaving money on the table because they don't see speaking as a marketing strategy. And speaking can be broad. It can be what we're doing right now, speaking on a podcast. It can be speaking on radio, maybe even being interviewed on TV or for lives. So there are many different types of speaking opportunities out there. So how can people get started? Well, number one, create a strategy for your own speaking growth. If you are a beginner or you want to level up in your skills, certainly work with a coach to help you get where you want to be. And then look, get out there and ask for opportunities. I always say, look, start with the people that you know. Think of all the groups and associations and business organizations that you know have speakers regularly. It may even be applying to speak at a conference or an event or a morning tea. Start small, but definitely get started. And in order to get bookings and to get that exposure and build up your positioning and your branding through speaking, we need to be good at marketing as well. So we need to be able to let our potential client know what value we bring for the audience. So having a well-crafted few paragraphs, half a page, or in the speaking world, we often talk about a one sheet. So having something which describes your keynote or your talk, most importantly, what's in it for the audience and what they're going to learn through having you come to speak, will really help set you apart. And then when the people who are booking speakers are looking through all the applications, or they're wondering who to pick when they're looking at through LinkedIn, it makes it easier for them to choose your topic and ultimately to choose you.
Oh, I couldn't agree more with the power of speaking up and showing up, because people see you live, they get to experience you, and with that, they get to trust you. And it has always, every single talk that I've ever given has always resulted in clients straight on the back. If that was a paid keynote or a free keynote, it doesn't matter, because people could just resonate with it. And I was always very educational. I gave them all the tips and all the steps, and initially it did nothing for me. And it was at a random event that I completely went off a tangent and told my story. And I had a line up, because there were 100 females. It was a launch event, and I was like, what just happened? And this is when first time I realized the power of my own story, that I should tell it more often. Now, I'm curious about your take on the keynote topic. Do we need to have one signature topic? Is it better to have a portfolio of 2, 3 topics? Where would we go? Where would we start?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think that sometimes in the early days, when somebody is an emerging speaker, they might try and have too many topics on offer. They've got like the big menu because they want to try and get the bookings. But I recommend that you'd have a theme, and that would be based on your area of expertise and your skills and your experience, but doing a little bit of market research so that you know what the market is buying at the moment, and seeing who else is out there speaking on something similar. And then you work out, okay, well, how am I different? And it may be my story and my uniqueness, or perhaps you've got a different angle or take on that particular topic. So you would have your topic and your high level theme, and then I suggest in the beginning that you focus on one keynote, get that really good, try it out, test it, get feedback, evolve and tweak it as you move along. And then perhaps you can introduce another one that is similar, but it's best not to have too much out there, too many products out there in the beginning. And of course, it takes a lot of time to put together a keynote and have it refined and a real solid offering. You don't want to make it harder for yourself by having a big laundry list.
Yes, excellent advice. And for most professionals, it's a way to get exposure. It's a way to build relationships. It's a way to build credibility. They are not professional speakers that they could just turn out an incredible keynote within a couple of hours. Like, as you said, it requires a lot of preparation and rehearsal and changing and tweaking. Now, when we have gotten out a topic and we said, yeah, this is where we thrive in, it's our area of expertise, how do we now go about developing it? Is there a bit of a ratio between educational content, like the science of it, and the story? Or do you say 100% story with a few statistics and numbers in between? Is there a formula?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Petra. And I think the answer, you're probably not going to like the answer. Well, the answer is, well, it depends.
I love it.
Audience, it depends on the type of event. Let's say you are invited to speak at an awards night, or an occasion where the organization is recognizing their high performers, and that event is really all about celebrating, and your talk might be more entertaining rather than informative or persuasive. So it always goes back to, what is the outcome? What is the outcome of my talk? Where do I want people to land? And we then need to build the talk depending on what that purpose is. If we are sharing a TED talk, we want to be short, we want to be simple, we want to be very, very clear on our message, because it's only one idea worth sharing. But we want to have that balance between data and facts and information, as well as the personal piece, which is your unique insights, which makes a difference. And if you are speaking at a technical conference, well, you'd be expected to come up with some more technical content. But yeah, definitely the use of story can be applied whatever the setting. It doesn't have to be a huge story. It can be a simple story that's woven through. It can even be the use of metaphor and analogy, which is very, very important in technical works. It helps to explain in a simple way a very complex context at times.
Absolutely. And what you said couldn't be any better. Like the answer is spot on, that you say, what is my intention? What's the purpose behind this keynote? Because you can have one topic, but you can still bring it across in different ways. It may be at a networking event, it's more the personal story. At a conference, it could still be the same topic, but you use more studies and statistics and facts and case studies rather than your personal story with it. So it is kind of elastic approach to the keynote, depending on the context and the situation. Would you say that?
And we make our decisions, a lot of our decisions are emotional ones. And so we need to have that balance between the logic and the emotion, the logos and the pathos. You're going back to Aristotle's triangle of rhetoric or Aristotle's modes of persuasion. Without emotion, it's very hard to move people along to change. We can certainly do it a lot faster with the power of storytelling. And the difference is, data is data, but stories give people a reason to care. And if we don't care about something, well, we're more reluctant to do it.
It's so true. And would you say that we should connect our story to the data, or could it be two separate aspects to the same topic?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, Petra. And I think that your story does need to be it needs to be relevant to your particular topic. So yes, there are many great examples out there of how people can successfully bring data to life through data storytelling, and particularly with powerful visuals that really pop and tell a story. But you may have a story that's a little bit more lateral, that's a little bit more abstract, but it does need to be relevant and relatable to that particular topic. So we're not simply sharing a story for the sake of sharing a story because it's nice. Sometimes I have heard people and they've started off with a story, and then when they get into their content, my brain's trying to join the dots when there's not a connection. They are purely breaking the ice with a story. Whereas if we think about our story and we come up with something that is very relevant, it's going to be more memorable. And when they remember your story, they're more likely to remember your content and overall your message.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I'm curious to hear more of those no-nos. What kind of mistakes have you seen your clients make when it comes to delivering or giving or preparing for a keynote? What do we need to consider when we've got a big event coming up? When do we know that a presentation lands or not?
Yeah, look, that's a good one. And there are two different types of people. There are people who under prepare and wing it. And, I always say, look, winging it is not a strategy. You may get away with it a few times. And so there are people that procrastinate, often because they're because of a fear or underlying stress. We put off what we don't really want to do. And there are other people who over prepare. And that can be as much of a barrier as under preparing, really, because you prepare and you prepare and you prepare, and by the time the big day comes, you're sick of the sight of your script and you can't stand the sound of your voice because you've been doing it over and over again. So look, somewhere in between, I think, is good. The more time that you can think about your talk and the more lead time that you have, the better. And I always think a good place to start is by asking the right questions. So in that discovery phase, when somebody has asked you to speak, or even if you're putting on your own event, you want to go through a bit of a checklist and ask yourself, okay, well, who's going to be in the audience? How many people are going to be in the audience? What's their level of understanding of my topic? Are they fellow industry experts or are they novices? What do they want to know? What do they need to know? And often
Mm.
this you'll be able to have a discovery call with the person who's inviting you in, and they will tell you what it is that they want, and usually you co-design the learning outcomes and that brief to start with. But it's really important to ask those questions, and then you want to allow adequate time to actually put your talk together, enough time that you can let it simmer for a while and come back to it. And then you also want to make sure you have enough time for the delivery part of it, because some people will spend a huge amount of time on the content and the slides, and then the day before they think, oh, I better do a run through, so that you get the timing right. This is why you need to run through the delivery. You want to get the timing right, you want to get the flow right, you want to get those transitions right. And all that takes practice. You want to make sure you're speaking at a rate that can be understood. You want to have nice vocal tones. And so ideally, the 5 days before your talk, preferably, you don't want to be practicing your talk. You want to then be focusing on the mindset, the visualization, getting yourself in that really confident, powerful mindset so that you can show up to really be the best version of yourself. And then also focusing on things like self-care. So good hydration, good sleep, proper eating, those sorts of things, so that when the day comes, you feel, wow, I'm ready to go, and you're not scrambling around at the last minute working on slides or notes. Yeah. So
Yes.
somewhere in the middle. You don't want to be an over preparer. Who's got that time? Who's got that time to be spending hours poring over it? And that can just increase the stress levels. But don't wing it. If you want to do a really good talk and you want to perform on the day, then put in some time and effort. It pays dividends. And of course, the more comfortable you are with your topic, then when that stress does kick in, when the big moment is about to happen, you can feel more comfortable, because you think, well, I've got this. I've got it. I know my stuff. I've run through it. And I'm going to do an amazing job. Whereas if you haven't really put in the time, it's like, I wish I'd have practiced a bit more.
Absolutely. And, even though everyone speaks, there's a big difference between showing up professionally and just speaking for the sake of it. One of my early coaches always said, professionals, they prepare, amateurs, they wing it. And
Yeah.
also when you're not a professional, as in a paid speaker, but simply making sure you are within the time slot that you're allocated, you have the right tonations. It's not just a monotonous tudun, 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 and people are drifting away. And also, realizing, is it enough story or is it too much? Is it enough science, data, and facts, or is it not enough? Does it not support it?
Yeah. So getting good feedback is really helpful as well. So you're seeking feedback and then continuing to tweak and refine your talk, and until you can be really happy that it's landing every time. But I also have like an 80-20 rule for myself, Petra. What I do is that every time I speak, whether it is a training or a workshop or a webinar, whatever it is, I always have 20% of new content each time. And that way it's fresh, it's relevant. I'm not getting tired of it, sort of, oh, I've got the same old slides that I've been using for a while now. And so I never get complacent. It keeps me on edge and brings new stuff. So it may even be, okay, I'm going to use a new piece of music today, or I'm going to draw a new picture, or I'm going to ask a different question. But that constantly working to make sure that your talk is really good and that it's fresh, and that when you get up and you deliver it, because we got to remember that for the people sitting in the chairs, it's probably the first time they've ever heard it. So we want to come across as though we've got that, real enthusiasm for our topic, as though it's the first time we've shared it too.
Yeah, such a great tip with the 80-20 rule, because you know the structure, you know what comes in which order. So that gives you the confidence, but you also don't want to get bored with your own talk, especially if you give it over and over. And as you said, for people, it's the first time. if you expect them to know everything, you've lost them already, because what you mentioned also before is all about the audience. Who is there? What do they want to get out? What's their level of knowledge about the topic? You also briefly mentioned TED Talk. I'm super curious. Like I feel it's the pinnacle of speaking, whether you're a professional speaker or an amateur speaker, but who wants to get their message out there. And we don't necessarily know the audience because they're a mixed bag. What is a successful TEDx talk or TED talk, and what's the difference to a normal keynote or presentation?
Yeah, good question. Well, the TEDx, they are the independent events that are under license. So the TEDx events, and there are many, many, many around the world, they're focusing on local geographic area and local content. And of course, then there is the main TED platform. And TED stands for Technology, Education, and Design. And so the talk is broadly in one of those categories. The main premise of a TED or TEDx talk is one idea worth sharing. So it's only one idea, it's not 10 ideas. So simplicity is really key. And a TEDx talk does need to be something unique. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be an inventor or you have to have some, crazy new thing. It is your unique angle or unique perspective on something. So how have you done it differently? What have you uncovered in your journey? What's new in your world? How can you add to the body of research that's already out there? Now, the rules for a TEDx talk are the length must be no more than 18 minutes. Personally, I've observed, at least over the last couple of years, the ideal time is getting shorter. And I believe that the sweet spot for a really good TEDx talk is around 8 to 10 minutes. So I like the shorter ones. And I feel that if you can't explain it and tell us in a way that's compelling in 8 to 10, you're probably not going to do it in almost 20. So I think you keep it short, keep it simple. Now, in some areas, because each TEDx is independent, so they do get to sort of control the process of the speaker curation process. In some areas, you can apply. So there'll be a speaker application. You can apply to many, many different cities. Doesn't have to be your own. And in other areas, there is a curation team that comes up with the theme and the general topics that they want to showcase. And then they go out and they search for speakers based on recommendations and who's around. And so there's that process there. So some people apply, other people get selected. It is competitive, of course, but there are more TEDx events popping up all over the place, universities and really specific ones. We have one in Perth, TEDx Kings Park, where the focus is on youth, which is amazing. There are women-led TEDx events. There are even TEDx events that are held in institutions such as prisons these days, which is fascinating.
It is fascinating. And wow, excellent insight. Thanks so much for shedding some light into that space. Now, I'm curious, before we wrap up, everyone is scared of a presentation because something could go wrong. They could fall off this of the stage. They could, I don't know, fade, whatever it may be. Is there anything that has happened to you that you were kind of embarrassed, one of the early moments? Is there anything that you are happy to share with us?
Yeah, look, there's a couple of things there's lots and lots of things. And I think that something that's interesting is something that might feel embarrassing to us. Often our audience don't even know. And so if something happens, try not to let that throw you. Try and, carry on. That's also part of having that professional outlook to be able to carry on anyway. So I remember a time when I'd organized a videographer to come and record my talk. It was a breakout session. There were lots of concurrent sessions going on. And the videographer that I booked at the last minute wasn't available, so he sent a substitute. I didn't see the person when I was just about to start. And so I sent a text message later on in that afternoon. And I realized in the conversation that something was not quite right. And it turned out that he'd sent the videographer to the room next door. So the videographer recorded the speaker in the room next door. So I felt embarrassed and awkward about that. And another time I was at a conference and the MC introduced me. She said my name as I walked up to walk on the stage, but she read somebody else's bio. So here I was walking up onto the stage, listening to this person recite all these amazing academic accolades that were not mine. And I just thought, oh gosh, and well, does it matter? You know, who in the audience is going to know? I just smiled and got started. So with experience and with practice, you learn to not let these things impact you. You learn to, let go of particularly those things you can't control and breathe through it and deliver to your audience and make the focus on them always.
Oh, thank you so much for being so honest. And you're so right. It's part of being professional. Things happen, life happens, like nobody's perfect. If we make a big fuss out of it that people would usually not even recognize anyway, then we draw attention to what's going wrong rather than focus on what can I do to make it right and turn the situation around, have a smile, enjoy myself, and give the best experience to the audience. So
yeah, and then learn from that
Mhm.
experience and go, okay, well, what can I do to make sure that doesn't happen next time? Well, I can ring the videographer before the event and just check that they're coming.
Yes, it's what's the saying? It's either a success or a story. So there you go.
Absolutely.
Lisa, this has been fantastic. Now, where can everyone find you, connect with you, learn more what you're up to?
Yeah, well, LinkedIn is always a good place. I hang out on LinkedIn as you do, Petra. And my website is speakingsavvy.com.au.
I'll link that, of course, in the show notes. And I can't recommend anyone higher to engage with you, to learn how to actually get your message across better. It will pay back 10 times, 100 times. Thank you again for being on the show.
Thanks, Petra.